looks good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Workflow Wednesday. This week we're joined with Pye Jirsa. I should have asked ahead of time. Okay,
We got it.
SLR Lounge. I'm really excited for this one. This is going to be really fun. And because I personally don't have a lot of experience or kind of touch on photography much. A lot of the that goes on around here is a lot more like video editing. And so this will be very educational, I think, for myself and the audience at large.
For sure.
So thank you for first off to joining us, taking some time out of your day to join us this week. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to be here, man.
Thank you. Awesome. So I'd like to start off the big intro thing, just in case anybody doesn't know. Give a little intro of who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Well, so a little more than a decade ago, we started a photography studio called Pye Jirsa Photography. Shortly after that, we created an educational platform for photographers. It's kind of the operating manual for our studio for both stills and cinema and kind of everything that we do as a business. So that side is SLR Lounge. The Pye Jirsa side is the client side. The SLR Lounge side is the photographer side. And then we just launched a third entity that's kind of resources and software for photographers.
Okay.
So that side's Visual Flow.
Right.
Yeah,
Cool.
So we have our hands in a few things.
Okay. That's neat. And so that's kind of how we, as Puget Systems, got kind of connected with you through the SLR Lounge side of things.
Yeah.
You've done some wonderful reviews and stuff with us. And so I'd like to kind of talk about that side of things. So what were you working with before, and how have things changed since?
Okay, so before that, we were working with various kind of more off-the-shelf computers that you'd get from like typical manufacturers. We never had good luck with them, and so we started also designing and building our own. But the issue with that was that it's like, and it's funny because we run a fairly large studio. Like we can have, at one point we had up to 40 people, 40 team members working in the studio, and there's 20 or 30 computers for each one that's lined through, our networks. And people will often say like, oh man, why would you buy a PC? You could just build it. And I'm like, have you tried building and maintaining 30 computers like for a business, let alone like even like 2 computers? Like just, it's a very challenging process, and having hardware that frequently has issues, whether we picked up like something off the shelf or whether we built it ourselves, it was just kind of a nightmare. So we ran into you guys, I think it was about 2 years ago, and one of our employees was like, hey, we should try out Puget. And I went to the website and I was like, oh, like this is kind of everything I wanted. And this isn't supposed to be pitchy. This is just like, I've always wondered why companies don't do purpose-built machines. Like why can't you guys just have a machine? If it's they either call it gaming or productivity or multimedia, but like those are such broad genres. Gaming kind of makes more sense, but like on the productivity side, on the multimedia side, there's Lightroom versus, people that do primary work in Photoshop versus, Premiere. So when we ran into your guys' site, I was like, okay, you're speaking to me. And then we tried out some of the machines and they were incredible. Like we've never had issues with them. There was one, it was funny. There was one that had, my very first one had an issue that we discovered had nothing to do with the actual computer. It was the strangest thing. It was the mouse that I was using in particular. It was a Logitech, and it was causing these weird freezes and slowdowns and hiccups. And your tech support, we literally walked through everything. They called me back and they said, we found the issue. It's actually underlying hardware issue with that Logitech. Try a different mouse. And it fixed it. And I was like, dude, it's crazy that I spent like no company has ever supported a machine and then figured out that it's someone else's thing and like called me back and like done all that stuff. If they say, oh, it's not our issue, we're not going to handle it or help. So anyway, we had a really great experience, and then we said we need to work with you guys more.
Oh, that's cool to hear. Wow. And something like that. Yeah. Who would have thought that it'd be
a mouse
peripheral like that?
Yeah.
That just seems, I mean, on a personal side, I would, I just get frustrated with something not working, and do that sort of like one thing at a time until you figure it out. But that's cool to hear that our support people did that as well. That's really
It was awesome. It was awesome.
um, so I imagine then you work a lot with, like you had mentioned, like Photoshop and Lightroom. How has, well, actually, before we go that far, um, I'd like to know a little bit more about the process.
Sure.
So I know you kind of get into, your website mentions wedding photography. What does that look like from, like, not step by step, but like from the beginning to end? And how does that all work together with the hardware, and the software, and things like that?
Of course. So during, and one, somebody mentioned, Alexander mentioned that it sounds like there's an overloaded mic. I'm wondering if that's fixed or if that's, if he's still noticing that out.
I think it was my gain cranked up a lot. I'm hoping it's a little better.
Yeah. Alexander, let me know if it's on my side. I can turn the gain down as well. So, when it's not COVID, we normally are shooting, about 350 to 400 weddings a year. And we do stills as well as cinema. So our data needs and our throughput is massive. Like, we're putting in terabytes of data every single weekend through our networks. So needs wise, we have quite a bit. We have to be able to not only move data around very quickly, but then we also have to load, typically Lightroom on the still side. So we're between Lightroom and Photoshop on the still side, and we're usually in Premiere on the video side, and we're dealing with a lot of 4K footage. Fortunately, we don't do a lot of raw 4K. It's more just 4K, H.264. So
Okay.
we have pretty intense needs.
Yeah. I'm surprised you mentioned network. Is that like actually remote? You're actually emailing these large, or cloud storage?
No, so
that sort of a
we
deal?
have a full studio. We have a full studio that is about a 10,000 square foot space right out of Irvine. And so
Okay.
that's where we have all of our networks, all of our, servers, everything is there. So most everything is in-house. Like, again, I say pre-COVID, most everything is in-house.
Right.
So it would be impossible to manage that much data via any type of, internet-based kind of
Sure.
service.
Right.
Because usually a single shoot will come back with, like if you're talking about a lead photographer, a second photographer, and a third photographer, and they're shooting 30 megapixel files, they might come back with 8,000 to 10,000 photographs that are raw files. So we're talking 250 to 500 gigs from a single shoot, and we might be working with 6 to 8 weddings just in one day. So in one day, we might be putting through 5 terabytes of data from just the still side. And then that doesn't speak to the cinema side.
That's massive. I'm so many. I thought just a few. I took a few hundred photographs from a vacation just recently, and I thought that was a lot.
That is a lot when you're by yourself.
Yeah, like, again, I think that's an interesting perspective. I think a lot of people don't quite realize just how massive just even one project can be. And so then, I mean, it must take a long time just to import all that stuff into Lightroom.
Oh yeah. Yes, we have to. We first take everything over to the server, and then we download to individual machines, and those machines will be set up to basically bring everything into Lightroom at that point. But it would be impossible to go straight into Lightroom just because Lightroom's not fast enough, nor is it designed to handle that much data from different shoots and things like that. So we generally will process each shoot on its own Lightroom catalog and then separate it out. So we'll create a new catalog for every single shoot that we do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very different workflow than typically you're shooting solo. You keep everything you have in one single catalog, and you kind of move and organize from that catalog. On our side, we have to be able to finish a client's work, archive it, and then if we need to, we have to be able to pull it. So if that work is combined with 20 other clients, archiving and pulling and making updates and changes becomes extremely cumbersome because you have so many other images loaded in. So we save out catalog by catalog so that it's easy to pull, it's easy to adjust, it's easy to re-archive, and keep everything separated.
Okay. So yeah, wow. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here from. I guess my audio is kind of wonky. I think might be.
Apollo said the story about the mouse and care to figure out the issues at Diamond of Insight. Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things for us that was like, we had one machine at that time and it sold me, and I was like, we're going to convert everything. So we've been slowly converting everything over to, I think we have like 7 now.
Oh, wow. That's
7 Puget systems.
Cool.
If you guys made, if Apple opened up and allowed OS X to be installed on Puget machines, that would be the perfect dream. Because I can't stand Apple hardware, but I love their software. If we can get Puget to design the hardware for Apple, oh my goodness, it would be game over.
That would be really cool. And so I suppose then it's that's an interesting point to make. Is it just the operating system itself that is more enjoyable then?
Yeah, you know what's it sounds so ridiculous, Houston, but there is this incredible workflow benefit, especially on the creative side, from the way that you can hand off things from your computer to your phone back and doing all that kind of stuff on Apple. Yeah. So oftentimes what I do is in fact, if the computer were not attached to the camera, I would actually show you guys. I have my Puget system right next to me, and I do all of my major editing on that. And then I have a nice connection where I can just send it straight to Google Drive. And then I use my Mac for publishing. So as soon as it gets to I have the iMac right now that I'm on. So as soon as it gets to, okay, now we're going to prep final pieces for social media, for YouTube, for whatever we're going to do with that, I'll take it to my Mac, because then I can output and go directly to all the devices. So I can take things and send it directly to the phone. I can take things and send it anywhere I want. And I'm like, this is such a simple thing that Microsoft kind of never really did a good job of. And now you have Windows and Androids. You have like the closed ecosystem of having these things makes so much sense. But unfortunately, we can't get the hardware benefits on that side. So
yeah, that's interesting. That's really cool to hear how you have, I suppose, mixed those workflows that way. Because that's always an interesting thought. Either making the shift and then like, oh man, my keyboard's shortcuts are different, or completely having to change from one software platform to another. And so that's really cool. You found a nice, not quite seamless, but a way that works across both for you. That's really cool.
It's not ideal, and it's definitely expensive, but that's the only thing that has so far kind of done the trick. Because editing on, like, I have an iMac Pro, and when I got this thing, it was like $7,000. It was the same price as my super high-end Puget, and my Puget will just walk all over it. I mean, like, it's not even funny. Like, if I'm editing 1,000 photographs, it might take me 6 hours on my iMac Pro. It would take me less than an hour on my Puget. So it makes no sense to do anything that's like beyond anything that's not a 5-minute thing. It makes no sense to do it on the iMac. I just go straight to the desktop. But it's weird, man. I don't kind of get it. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why Apple doesn't let people use it. I mean, I get the theory of it, but
yeah. Well, I think to kind of veer off into that a little bit, part of the reason why the like Mac OS and how that is such a seamless flow is because they control the hardware.
Control all of the hardware.
Windows has to be flexible enough to handle a million different combinations of graphics cards and monitors and input devices and all these extra parts, where Apple says, no, we're going to use these 3 things and that's it. And
that's true.
So,
but hey, if you guys at Puget can come up with a workflow that can turn desktop into that, I think that would make for a fantastic YouTube video to teach people on our side, like how to basically create that type of workflow of being able to seamlessly send things to your phone and back and forth. And because the best thing that I've come up with is Google Drive. but there's
Right.
always like a significant delay. Like it's kind of annoying to have to like, you know,
Yeah. I
so
mean, just with my vacation photos, I uploaded them to an album, or I thought they were, but then when I shared that out to friends and family, they're like, "Where are these pictures?" I'm waiting and waiting, and it was a mess.
yeah,
So I totally I totally understand that it's not as good as we'd like to hope, and I do hope one day that there is a much better, more seamless solution that way, because we're starting to get so much into just distributed computing and cloud based stuff that I feel like we're very close,
for sure.
where it'll be a lot more agnostic in that way, where file transfers and things can just go from one to the other regardless. It could be Mac, it could be PC, it could be Android, it doesn't matter. It's all just, it's up there and it can be brought to here.
That'd be a brilliant universe.
That'll be great. Oh yeah, that'll be good stuff. Okay, let me see if there's any questions here in the chat. Okay, just talk about the audio things. Seems everything is okay
Pedro
now.
said, hello, happy late. That input
Oh.
configuration, not the maximum I can use to build a workshop for a workstation
Oh.
for Photoshop.
I have an answer for that. Recently we've actually been putting out a series of articles that are less technically and data heavy, and kind of a good, better, best sort of.
Oh, that's
thing.
awesome. For configurations of different types
Yeah.
of machines.
And so here, real fast, that was from.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions on the workflow side of photography and cinema and dealing with that kind of stuff, feel free to chime in on that YouTube chat. I'm reading the messages, so we
Yeah,
can kind
please
of follow
do.
along with them.
Because I'm feel maybe a little disconnected, so I'm not quite sure what to ask. Except like, so you, I suppose just in a little more general sense, you've said you've been doing this for at least over a decade.
Yeah.
How have things changed over 10? I mean, I know it's more megapixels, bigger numbers, and things like that, but like the actual work, how has that changed for you?
Surprisingly, the actual work is very similar. And that's kind of an unfortunate side. Like we've actually been working directly with Canon to develop what might become the first artificially intelligent raw processing software. And so we're utilizing like the company that we developed for raw processing, Visual Flow, we're utilizing that process and system and trying to turn it into AI. And it kind of blows me away that this stuff hasn't been done before, that for the past decade, like it's all been the same. But really, yeah, for the past decade, you would have expected like the ways that we're getting files off the camera and onto the computer, I would have expected cloud-based immediate solutions a while back, but we're still popping memory cards out and plugging them in. And that feels like it's so dated.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few of the cameras that I play with have a Wi-Fi option, but it seems a little
Not good
janky.
enough.
I don't think I've actually ever gotten it to recognize my Wi-Fi network, or
Yeah.
I've never used
They're
it.
not reliable.
Yeah, and so
I think Canon is the first one right now that's introducing a shoot to cloud technology where you can actually have like a cellular service built into the camera and then shoot directly to the cloud. But in every way, mobile photography has changed so much more dramatically over the past 10 years than standard cameras have. Like the way that mobile works is in many ways far superior. The only thing that is lagging behind is in the actual image quality itself hasn't quite caught up yet, but that's only a matter of time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you see, there's always the battle when the new cell phone comes out, like, oh, who takes the better pictures and whatnot. And in some of the talks that I've had with different people, it seems that a lot of that comes down to the processing, like you were saying, the image processing after the fact. The actual like raw photograph is not that great, but after you've taken it, the software goes through and kind of fills in some of those blanks. And yeah, I'm curious why there hasn't been more of that crossover with bigger cameras, or like the more professional cameras like that.
It's very
You gotta,
it's very unusual. And I think that's eventually what's going to kind of erase most of that market, because even at present, I actually just started up a new account, a TikTok account that's called Born
hey,
Uncreative, and I
okay.
teach just how to use your phone to get incredible images. And the phone
Oh,
itself is incredibly powerful. People see the images and they're like, "There's no way that's not shot with a professional camera." And I'm like,
right.
"No, it's just professional knowledge translated into a phone."
Oh,
So
that's cool.
so you imagine like 5 years down the road, what's going to be the purpose of having, except for the most extreme demands.
Hmm.
There's not even really a need right now. Most people don't even know that their phone is capable of these things.
Oh
So
yeah.
even right now, most people don't have a need of a standalone camera. They just don't realize it. But 5 years down the
Right.
road, even more so. Like, what's going to be the need? So this market is going to be whittled away into just those that have a very specific need and demand are going to be buying standalone cameras. I believe
Hmm.
everybody else is just going to be using their phones.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think so. It has shocked me, the progression, not just in like photography and things, but just the power and capability of the little square that I keep in my pocket is remarkable. I
It's
mean,
crazy.
I have a near full Adobe suite on my phone. I can do
Yeah.
video editing, I can do photos, the whole kit, and it's great.
It'll blow you away, dude. I mean, like, it's 10 years ago, this was having you have an entire desktop solution in your hands for publishing and for doing anything that you want to do. And we actually have the luxury of being on Zoom. So if you'd like, I can share my screen and show you some
Oh,
iPhone photos.
actually, yeah, that would be really cool. In fact, I'm prepared for that. I can make your shared screen full screen for everybody.
Okay, let me do this then. I'm gonna go share photos. You guys see in my iPhone library?
Yep.
Okay. So these are iPhone photos. Everything I'm about to show you was shot on an iPhone.
Wow.
The resolution, the detail, like, it's fantastic. And people think like you can't print from them, and I'm like, you're nuts. You can totally print. Sorry, there's other stuff mixed in here. So I did a recent video on how to shoot product images with your iPhone. So we're doing product
Yeah.
images, high speed product photos. This is shot on an iPhone.
Wow.
Let's see.
With no, you haven't done anything to
No,
these yet. This is
it's
just
the
this is from your phone, straight
these
up.
are from the phone straight up. Like, these are the actual photographs off the phone. So I have edited, like, I've applied one preset in Lightroom Mobile. So
Okay.
so this is where we're developing intelligent presets. So these are
Uh
using
huh.
visual flow presets, but this is, again, iPhone portrait. Like,
Wow.
and you'd expect, you see
Now,
these and you're like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
this isn't just auto, right? You've have you fiddled with any? I have a very basic understanding of the triangle, right?
Yeah.
ISO, exposure, and stuff. And so, have you fiddled with that at all to take these photos?
Yes. So what I teach people
Okay.
on that, so my whole side of education is, I'm going to take you from just your phone all the way through to professional DSLR. But first, I want people to realize how powerful their phone is. So
Yeah.
once again, this is shot on the iPhone. Like, every single one of these has been an iPhone. So there's a lot of built-in functions that people don't know how to use, like how to adjust exposure and how to do all those things. So I'm teaching them how to do that, and then saying, okay, when the phone is actually your limitation, that's when it's time to step up. But this was funny. This came from I was walking around downtown and I saw these two rappers, and they had their kind of friends and their crew taking pictures of them. And I was like, look, I'm a professional photographer. Would it be cool if you gave me 30 seconds? Give me 30 seconds to take a photograph. The caveat here is, I'm going to film it and I'm also going to shoot it on an iPhone. And they were like, no, we're not really that interested. And I'm like, I promise it's going to be a good shot. And they go, okay, fine. And then I had them for, I kid you not, 30 seconds. And then I took this image and then I showed them and they freaked out. And they were like, how does this even possible? But these are all just iPhone shots, kind of knowing how to use the camera. And so this is what it would look like straight from the camera. And then you throw it into Lightroom and you put a preset on it, and then you can bring all the detail out. But the images are incredible straight up. So this is again straight up iPhone shots.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
anyway, this is where I see the world of photography kind of going, is towards this direction of like, if the phones can do this now, then you only imagine where it's going to be in 5 years. And at
Right.
that point, the need for a camera that's not your phone is going to essentially only be when you need raw files produced at a rate of 10, 20 frames a second and very specific demands, like absolute control over image quality. That's going to be the need for it. And that's
Okay.
going to be the 1% of the market.
Wow. So Eric in the YouTube actually brings up a really good point from that educational standpoint. What are some of the biggest headaches or hurdles you're seeing in your community right now, and what advice are you giving them?
So some of the biggest hurdles, like from the, tell me which side, like the tech side or from the creative standpoint, it's more so education.
Okay.
Most everybody is locked into the mindset that I can't do something unless I can't do this unless I have this. So the reason why my images don't look like this is because I don't have this. And in reality, the reason that their images don't come out a certain way is because they lack the education, they lack the knowledge, and it has nothing to do with gear. So on that side, the biggest headache, the biggest hurdle is overcoming the marketing message that has been drilled in that you need, more. From the tech standpoint, I would say the biggest issue creatives have is data management. It's workflow.
Okay.
There's so many needs right now to be able to output and to be able to have different resolutions, different sizes, different files available for every device, and maintaining color consistency across them and making sure there's data safety from the camera to the computer. These are the main headaches that I find photographers running into most. Data safety being a big one of them.
And when you say that, is it as far as losing the memory card or somebody stealing the camera? It's like data safety.
Both. It's bad. It's bad data practices. So like, for example, if you're shooting something that is important, number one, starting with a camera body that has in-camera double backups. So, but then you need dual card slots for that. And then you also need to set it in the menu settings. And a lot of people don't ever learn how to set in the menu settings. So turning on that side. Then we have, so say for example, this is another workflow solution. This is called a NAR box. This is the 2.0 version. And it has data ports right in it where you can shoot and go straight from camera to this and have a third on-site backup available to you.
Wow.
And then you take this, and rather than have to plug in one card at a time, so this thing is going to be this is show and tell, Houston, show and tell.
I love it. This is great.
So this is a Lexar media reader. Okay, so it can input up to 4 cards at once, but the downside is it's one port on the backside. So there's only one USB 3 port on the backside. So if you've got 4 cards into this and you're inputting, 200 gigs of data, you're going to just go and have lunch because it's going to take a while for this thing to finish.
I was going to say, you go take a nap. That's not fast. That's not fast enough.
This guide just came out, and now our workflow has shifted to accommodate it. So now we can back up on location, go straight to this with all cards. So every single card goes into this and backs up here. Then we get a high-speed USB-C directly to the computer. We can offload everything at once. So we're constantly looking for these ways of just speeding up the workflow while keeping the data safe in the process. So if a camera gets stolen, I still have this. If I lose one of my cards, I still have a second card. Once it's on the computer, if one goes down, I still have a on-server backup that has redundancy. So that's probably the biggest issue that as a photographer steps from I would say that's the biggest issue most photographers face, because you'll constantly hear about people losing their own images as well. But on the professional side, it's probably the first thing that has to be addressed is just data safety. If you're being paid, you can't lose stuff.
Right. Oh man, I would have actually. I hadn't realized it, but I've lost a few cards myself. And I'm not even or have backed them up onto a USB, like a flash drive or something, and I'm like, okay, this is my video thumb drive, keep it with the
Yeah.
laptop, you know. Wow,
You know,
yeah,
when
that's
it's when
really
it's for
important.
yourself, you're kind of like, oh, that sucks. Better do a good job next time. When it's for a client that happens, oh man, that is the
Well,
worst thing in the world. You're like sick to your
yeah.
stomach, can't get over, you can't sleep, and yeah,
Oh man,
it's major liability.
dang. Yeah, that's and I can imagine just one screw up and could ruin you, really, because
Yes, yes.
reputation and everything.
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll give
wow.
you one example. I have for 10 years, or for the entire time I'm running my studio, I've never lost, personally, I've never lost a photograph. Now, you do enough of these and you're eventually going to have one instance of something. But we've been
Uh huh.
very fortunate to not have to, I think, other than one camera being stolen, and we've never had to deal with this.
That's
But
good.
the one time that it happened, I only lost 5 photographs. This is out of 2,500 images. I lost 5 photographs. Okay. So it's not
Wow.
like it was a significant amount. I lost 5 photographs. It cost me $5,000
Whoa. Whoa. And so wait, how do you only lose five though? That's instead of like all of them at once. Was it?
because there was one instance where I was working in a situation, an environment where I deviated from my typical workflow practice. It was a high stress situation, and I was going back and forth shooting different things, and the client was pulling back and forth doing different things. And I said, you know what, I'm going to deviate, and I'm going to shoot, instead of using my main camera, I'm going to use my second camera for this, just for these 5 images, and then I'll grab it off my second camera, so that way I don't have to keep switching
Oh,
cameras.
right.
Well, that second camera never hit the workflow, so those files
Oh,
never got backed up, because that wasn't a typical workflow that we had. So
right.
those 5 images
Man.
cost 25% of the job. So
Wow.
we 99% of everything was fine. To make it right, we had to refund 25% of that job.
Wow.
So that's the significance of like a single mistake. And that wasn't even a mistake where, if it was a critical failure, we would have ended up refunding everything. That was just a tiny
Right.
mistake where one small piece was missing, and everything else like was perfect. And a tiny
Wow.
mistake like that, it ends up being a significant, amount of. So when you're working at that professional level, each one of these mistakes, if it's a critical failure, you're right, one single critical failure can end a business. If it's a
Wow.
minor one, like the one that I made, then you're talking, it doesn't feel like a slap on the wrist. It feels like
Well,
you're you're getting, you know, the
yeah,
broad end of
that's
the stick,
that's
and it's gonna hurt.
that hurts. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, 5 grand or 500 even, like that's a hefty, that's a slap in the face. Like
Yeah,
that's no,
it's
that's
brutal.
no
It's
fun.
it's brutal, period.
Wow, wow. Dang, that's yeah. So I suppose that kind of drills home the idea of kind of almost, I suppose, because it sounds like part of it, not to blame the customer, but in part it was some of that distraction. And so I think part of the takeaway there is being strict in your process, and pressing on the customer in a way to like, no, hang on, this is how we do things, and we have to stick to that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like there was plenty of room on that particular shoot to say this was not our responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, if you're the professional that's being hired to do the job, the buck ends with you. Like it
Right.
really ends with you, and saying, like you said, you either control the process and say, I'm not willing to do that, I'm not going to do this, we need to slow down, we need to focus on each different piece.
Yeah.
Or if you make that decision, you own it. So
Right.
I made the decision, and I was like, ultimately this ends with me. Like I shouldn't have made that decision, and that was a $5,000 mistake that I will never do again. And I
Yeah.
thank my, I thank my lucky stars that it was just 5 images.
Right.
It was such a small error, but it was such an important lesson. That's such a minor error that has literally no impact over the entire deliverable. I mean, you think about it, 2,500 images. This isn't even 1% of those.
Right.
This is 0.2% of that entire deliverable. Yet it costs 25% of the contract. So when you think about the level of significance, it was a very important lesson that we all needed.
Yeah. So to kind of let's go back a little bit. You were stressing the point that it isn't, and this is something that comes up a lot in content creation. It isn't so much the camera. It isn't the actual hardware in that sense that really makes something amazing. I kind of lost where I was going with that. But so like you say, pictures can be done incredibly well with a cell phone. What other piece of that? There's like the education, and so like where do you suggest people start or look first? SLRLounge.com.
Yeah, no, that's shameless plug time. No, so I mean, SLRLoungeWorkshops.com has workshops ground up. I'd say if people are just starting with their phone, come follow me on TikTok at Born Uncreative. That's completely free. They can kind of get an idea of just how far you can go. And then when they go, all right, I'm ready to take this a step further, that's when I'd say jump onto SLRLoungeWorkshops.com. That's where you can go A to Z. You can, I mean, just blow it up. And it's fun. Photography is this rabbit hole that you dive down, and you start with your phone, and then you end up $10,000 later having an incredible hobby that you're like, I can't imagine my life without this. So it's a really fun area to get into.
Yeah. I'm curious too about the differences in the I guess the kinds of photography. And is there a difference in the workflow from like weddings to product to those guys on the street?
Absolutely.
Is there a different? Is it just a mindset difference? Like you have to, frame things, or is it from start to finish everything is different?
It's almost start to finish everything is different. I mean, when you look at the commercial, so I'll give you an example, and I've shot kind of a little bit of everything. I liked wedding and portraiture the most, and so that's where we focused. But let's talk about some of my shoots with, I did some shoots for Nissan, some shoots for Toyota, where it was completely commercial. Typically on shoots like that, you're going to have a creative director on your set. The creative director is going to be usually one from the agency, usually one from the actual company. So Toyota will hire an agency, they'll send out one of their own creative directors, and then also you get a creative director from the agency itself. Sometimes it can be up to 6 or 7 creative directors on your set, and it gets obnoxious because it's essentially art by committee. So everything that you're doing, you have a mood board and a storyboard that you're basically going through and creating with. And it's very similar on the cinema versus the still side. You're essentially trying to create these images that have been predefined. And along the way, these creative directors are going to say, oh, you know what? I really don't like that sofa cushion where it's placed right there. I feel like that pillow needs to go on the other side. And there's a distraction in the background. You're like, that distraction's a painting. It should go there. And they're like, no, I don't like the painting. Is there another painting that we can get to put on that wall? And they will creatively deconstruct and reconstruct your image. So it removes the process from it. And you're shooting directly to the video village. So you have a video village set up where the creative director can basically watch and give input on what's going on. So that process is dramatically different. And at the end of the day, usually when it comes to a still shoot for a commercial client, you're delivering 10 to 15 images. So a hyper fast, Lightroom based workflow is not even necessary. What you need is more so Photoshop. And every one of those 15 images are going to go through detailed retouching and editing in Photoshop. And very little is going to be done with those images inside of, say, Lightroom. So a lot of times they bypass the Lightroom workflow entirely and they just go straight to Photoshop with the 15 images they need. They'll use software like Photo Mechanic to actually house the images and to actually navigate and pick their images. So every one of these, from sports to commercial to portrait to product, has a completely different workflow. And it starts from the planning phase all the way through to post-production.
Wow. Huh. That's I got hung up on something, and then I'm curious. From a workflow standpoint, what's the difference, or I suppose just in general, what's the difference between Lightroom and Photoshop?
So Lightroom is, if you think about the best way to describe it is Lightroom is designed to catalog. So it's number one, it's a method of organization. So it'll actually
Oh,
store your
okay.
photos. Your photos are on your hard drive, but you have a
Hmm.
catalog that indexes each of those photos. And what's happening inside of Lightroom is you can make adjustments that are, for the most part, kind of global editing adjustments. You have some control over local editing, and the difference between those is a global adjustment would be saying, I'm going to adjust the exposure and I'm going to take the entire image
Okay.
and make it brighter or darker.
Oh,
You also have the ability to adjust contrast and color and all these different things inside of Lightroom. But when you start trying to say, I want to do those on a local basis, I want to do it to select areas of the image,
hmm,
then Lightroom's tools get a little more limited. And it does give you some control, but it's more rough.
okay.
But you can edit large amounts of images using this method of batch editing. So
Okay.
you can basically apply settings to one image and synchronize it across multiple images and export them all simultaneously. But if you have to go into nuances, like if you want to do detailed skin retouching, if you
Hmm.
have to, fix reflections and do layering and all the things that are beyond those basic adjustments, you
Right.
have to go to Photoshop. And
Okay.
even though Photoshop can do the same things as Lightroom, it can't do batch editing. So it has all the same kind of functionality, but then it has additional layering and everything else that it can do.
Right.
So what they have in common is called Adobe Camera Raw. So
Okay.
Adobe Camera Raw is the raw processing that's built into both Photoshop and into Lightroom.
Okay.
Lightroom uses Adobe Camera Raw on a catalog basis, so you can apply it to hundreds of images at the same time.
Right.
Photoshop uses Adobe Camera Raw on an individual basis, so it can only be applied to one image at a time. And then
Okay.
Photoshop adds on to that by saying, we're going to allow you to do layers, composite, all the effects, all the crazy stuff that you would do.
Hmm. Okay. Thank you for that, because I've fiddled with both, and I never really understood what, like, I guess how to use them, and so now I think I at least now have a much better understanding of that. That's
The
cool. Thank
vast
you for that.
majority
That
of
was
people should stick to Lightroom. For
okay.
most people, just stick to Lightroom.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds, yeah, that sounds like the way to go, cuz yeah, and I suppose maybe I just got hung up on it, but that the concept of, like, you can do the same thing to all of the pictures you've taken all at once,
Yeah.
essentially, you know. Okay. Huh. That's really neat. Um so let me see here. So oh, what has been your personal biggest hurdle and struggle in your time as a photographer?
That's an interesting one.
Is there a particular, maybe, job or um, project that introduced a trouble that you had to overcome?
I mean, I would say probably figuring out which genre of photography best fits your personality and what you enjoy.
Okay.
Um, Namely because, like I said, wedding and portrait was kind of the area that best fit me. Now, there's a lot of money and it's very lucrative to be in the space of commercial photography and product photography and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And I'm good at it. I can do it, and I kind of got roped into doing quite a bit of it because you would do it for one client, the agency would be happy, they'd want to book you on more jobs, and it's a very fortunate problem to have. But at the same time, it's almost, if you're doing something that you very much don't like, it's soul crushing. So
Yeah.
it was going into each of these shoots, and I was getting like stomach ulcers, like going into each of these shoots going, I have 4 creative directors on set today, what are they going to make me do? And you're more a technician at that point than you are
Yeah.
a creative professional. You're simply there to kind of operate the camera, you're simply there to kind of direct and make sure everything happens. But so I would say the biggest hurdle for me has always been leaving opportunities on the table, knowing
Hmm.
that like it's not a good fit or that there's something better. But like when you first get into this, you always have that starving artist kind of mentality at the beginning. And so
Sure. Sure.
it's hard when someone says, here's a $30,000 contract and all you have to do is this. And it's hard to say, I'm going to pass on that because it's not a good fit for where I want to go. Because you sit there thinking like, what if I don't get another job in this amount of time? And what if I don't get this? And what if, but taking on those jobs makes it so you can't get more of what you want to be shooting. It makes it so you can't focus on what you want to be doing. And people hire you based on what you're shooting. So if I just finish a big job and I start posting all these images of cars, which is one of the things that happened, I started getting more clients that want to do cars. And I was like, I don't know that I want to be photographing cars all day long. Like that's not what I enjoy. So you can very easily get stuck and kind of pigeonholed into something that you don't appreciate simply because you were kind of looking at the short-sighted nature of it, of looking at just what's on the table. So that was probably the big thing, is like understanding that you have to specialize and you're going to have to give up things in order to specialize on that one thing, and picking the area that best fits with you long term, because that's the only thing that's sustainable. You have to pick something that fits into your personality. If it grinds you to deal with brides and mother of brides and all that kind of stuff, and it's annoying to you, then I would say don't do this. Like don't do wedding photography, because that's the nature of the job. So it's understanding that and picking the right area.
It's going to be hard to, like, okay, so I want to get into photography, but I don't know what kind I want to do yet. And so it's got to be a struggle too, to balance like trying to taste as much as possible, like, oh, well, maybe this is cool or that, without getting sucked down into that. Cause like, yeah, that's got to be really hard to. And how would you recommend somebody navigate that kind of thing? How do you find what you like to do the best without getting caught doing something you don't like doing?
So I think the key in that is personal work. On a weekly basis, I'm doing 2 to 3 shoots that are just for me. It's just personal work. I use it for education. I use it for, TikTok. I use it for social media. I use it for all the other channels that we do. But it's not work that I'm seeking clients for. So if I end up not liking it, I just don't post it. If I say I love this and I want to do more of it, then I'm going to post more of it. If I find that, hey, this is what I want to focus on, then I'm going to create a business built around that one particular thing. So the key is in personal work, not necessarily in taking on tons of different clients that hire you to do something, or trying different types of client jobs. I think you'll drive yourself nuts if you... Because when it's personal work, you can literally take one shot and be like, I hate this, I'm not going to do anymore. But if a client has hired you to get, landscape shots of Yosemite because they want to use it for their travel, I'm not saying they would. It would make no sense to do that given all the stock photos out there. But let's say that they did that. And then you were, you realize that, hey, I love hiking and I love being outdoors, but I really hate hiking for 6 hours to spend 2 hours in one location just waiting for the perfect light. Which that's me. Like, I love hiking. I love being outdoors. I love taking pictures on the go. But the best landscape photographers, the best people that do that, they will go to this same location 20 times through the year just so that one time had the perfect light. And the best of the best, the top, 0.001%, they have spotters who say, hey, you need to come out to Switzerland right now, because there's a special storm over the next 3 days that's going to yield this type of stuff here. Wow. And then they'll fly directly out there. Then they'll wait in one spot to get that perfect image. So,
wow.
Again, it goes back to like, you got to pick that thing that you actually enjoy doing. And if you take a client like this and you hate the work, well, number one, don't post it, because you're just going to get more of those clients that want that. But I wouldn't take it on in the first place.
That's cool. Are there avenues or communities that you recommend? Like I know Instagram is big, right? Instagram is the spot for pictures and video a little bit. But are there other places that you recommend for getting communities like that to post? Like, say, I really like doing car photos, and to get feedback and assistance in that way.
Yes, I'm going to actually link up several.
Okay.
So if you just type these in to Facebook search, then they'll pull up each of these areas.
Because in particular, I'm very interested in product photography. I like taking pictures of like computers and things, and so I'm personally curious, but I think it'll help everybody else too.
Yeah, no. So each of these, I linked up 4 different groups. Master Lighting, you'll find them. So they're groups by SLR Lounge, and they're on Facebook. So Master Lighting, if you see SLR Lounge and Master Lighting in there, if you just search that, you'll find it. That's mainly for just learning how to light and create, just lighting, like natural light all the way to flash, everything like that. Then there's Wedding and Portrait. Then there's Lightroom, so it's editing and Photoshop. And then there's Business. So those are 4 different groups that are completely free. You guys can join up, and it'll guide in each of those areas. Those are some of the best places to get to know peers, to try out different things. The other place I would say is as far as a community goes, actually, that's probably my favorite. Those are my favorite communities.
Okay.
And they're also the ones that we're in, so we can help,
Yeah.
guide the conversation of what's going on.
Awesome. Oh, that's great.
Gray Tower says, just thought of Lego hiking. You get a custom Lego guy of yourself and take pics all over the place. There you go. Make that your personal work, and who knows, maybe you'll be hired for it one day.
Right. A buddy of mine used to have like a little, I think like a little plushie, some little thing. It was like a turtle, and he goes to a lot of conventions and does like booth activations and stuff. But his like personal fun side was taking a picture of this little stuffed turtle at all the different places he goes. And
that's fun.
I don't think it wasn't anything like money making or anything, but it was fun and cute to do little things like that. That's fun. That's really neat. That's it. Oh, and thank you for sharing those. I know I'm gonna be poking around in that myself.
Of course.
Yeah. It's the middle of the road. Lego hiking. Do you have any other personal projects that you want to talk about or share with us? I'm really curious.
Oh man, at the moment, I mean, I'm shooting them constantly, so I would say the best place to follow them would be at Born Uncreative. But
okay.
There's not one specific one that I'm like, I'm excited about all of them right now because it's kind of me shooting for myself. So
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
What's been your, and so we have just a few minutes left, but I'm curious, what's been your in your whole span, what's been your most favorite shoot, I suppose?
Most favorite shoot. Oh, that's a tough one. Putting me on the spot there.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would probably say some of the stuff that's been the most fun. It's hard to identify one specific shoot.
Okay.
Our wedding and portrait clients are all amazing, and those are we've gotten a lot of really great shoots. But I feel like some of the things that I've had the most fun with have honestly been. So we have a new course that's coming called Creative Photography 101. And the whole premise of that was, let's teach an entire course. Let's show people how to create images ground up from that look professional, but with the phone. And so the camera for the entire course is just a phone, like the one that everybody already has. And the fun part about it has been eliminating all the other stuff, like all the other gear, all the other everything, and just going down to a place where you're just thinking creatively and just thinking, how can I use the limitations of this tool and still arrive at this place? And from a creative standpoint, it's been really fun. Like, you don't think about anything other than just what's in front of you and the story you want to tell. And I've really enjoyed that process.
Oh, that sounds so cool. I like that. Well, yeah, that makes me very, I don't know, it makes me really happy to hear that. It seems really like a really cool way of doing things.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really neat. And is that's on your site then, or soon to be?
Yeah, I believe. Let me see if I can find a link to it. It should be out sometime soon. It might not be up and live quite yet. Okay. Yeah, it's not. Oh no, there's a. So here it is. Oh. There is a link to. I just popped it onto YouTube, so they can see the latest. The little course trailer for it.
All right. This might be well, again, as we're coming up to it, I'm curious how did you get into the educational side of it rather than just doubling down on what was clearly a successful business with the portraiture and wedding photography? What made you want to get into the education side of it too? Because that seems very, very different.
Yeah. So we wanted to, the whole premise of it was I was already creating the education for our team members. So I was creating our own manuals for photographers who were just coming in based on their different levels, the experience, what they had to learn. And then I thought, well, let's put this stuff out there and see if people like it. And so we started this free website, slrlounge.com, and we started putting out education. And within a few months, we had 50,000 people a month on the site. And within a couple of years, we had, I think it was like 250,000 people on the site. And within, 5 years, it was 1 million people a month are on this site. So it kind of naturally evolved from us creating our own educational resources and then making it available to photographers around the world.
Neat. Okay. That's really cool because yeah, I guess if you're already doing it, might as well put it out there for other people. That's really nice. Yeah. That's really cool because in some areas they would keep a lot of that secret, like because it's your special sauce, so you might want to keep that to yourself, but that's really neat to get that stuff out there.
Yeah, no, my belief about that is that I feel like all the information is out there and you're going to learn it one way or another, and the things that I've learned have been inspired by other people, whether it's watching them or learning from their books or their education. And it's more so a choice of, do you want to be a part of someone else's journey or do you not want to be a part of it? Because if they're serious about it, they're going to do it anyway. Sure. And it matters not like what you do. So yeah. I never kind of understood that competitive drive of keeping secrets, namely because it's benefited us a lot just to share, like to be helpful. Yeah. So kind of like you guys put out a lot of resources on how to build your own machines.
Oh, but
sure. I've seen tons of creative, like amazing guides on there. And it's like, I love those guides, but in the end, I want to buy my machine. Like, I don't want to spend my time in that area. So like, it doesn't change, like the people that are going to be your customers, they're going to be your customers anyway. And the people that are not necessarily your customers for your computers are going to learn from you and realize that you guys are the thought leaders and moving, this stuff forward. And maybe they will one day become your customers. So it's that same kind of blend between the two, where you can kind of have the best of both worlds.
Yeah. I often come back around to the concept of time, right? Mm-hmm. Like you said, somebody who really wants to is going to find a lot of this information anyway, but it's going to take a lot of time and iteration and trying and learn and reading or videos, and you save a lot of time by just going through this workshop. And it's very similar for us too, is everything is out there. You could look at all the articles we do and build the exact same machine that we would, but it's going to take you a lot of time and effort, and especially if something goes wrong.
For sure.
So I feel like that's good. I feel like a lot of times people miss that part of it.
They begin to learn it when their time becomes more limited. When you're young and you're very liberal with where you spend your time, you're like, I don't mind spending 4 hours building a computer and then 2 hours a week maintaining it. And when you're older and you're like, I can't possibly fathom spending that time on that. I would much rather purchase it and focus on other things.
Yeah, or when you grow, like you were saying, 30 machines. That's a lot.
Yeah, there's no way
to build or upgrade or if something goes wrong, forget about it. That's why you pay somebody else to do it. For sure. Yeah, right on. Here in Brazil, we have a nice training ecosystem with professionals from many areas, sharing lots of knowledge and free time. Oh yeah, that's cool. I guess we're right at our hour here. Is there anything else you'd like to mention or shout out or point people to?
I'm good at the moment, brother. So the only link that I had was just slrloungeworkshops.com.
Sure. And your TikTok, right?
And TikTok. Follow me at
Yeah.
Born Uncreative.
All right. Born Uncreative.
Born Uncreative.
Okay, cool. Well, right on. Okay, well then we will say goodbye, and thank you, Pye, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. I personally have learned quite a bit, and I hope our audience has as well. And so thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time out of your day again. And yeah, this has been really fun. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Houston. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to say thanks to the audience as well for joining us. I hope you guys got a little bit of something out of it. My normal outro, we do this every Wednesday and Friday at 1 p.m. Pacific. On Wednesdays, we bring in industry experts to talk about their workflow and the process and a little bit about what they do and how they do it. And on Fridays, we have a member of our labs team come on to kind of get a little more insight into the crossover between the hardware and the software and how we help kind of navigate that space. So yeah, mark your calendars. Wednesdays, Fridays, 1 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, we'll see you guys there. Thank you very much. Bye.
See ya.